I have learned a lot in the past 3.5 years, non-resistance, because we fight tooth and nail, and you know what I mean? And it's like push and grind and all these things. And there is a part of that if you're trying to make something happen, but then there's also this component of like, can I leave it? Can I change it? Do I have to accept it? All else is madness. I feel super passionate about this vision, and I'm so hopeful that there is an adjustment and the industry evolves. And I'm super excited, and I'm along for the ride. I think it's going to be amazing. And at the same time, some of the decisions in there are not mine. And I have to be non-resistant to whatever will be. Can you look yourself in the mirror and been like, I acted with integrity. I was always horse first. I did the right thing. I'm proud of myself. Like all those things, which we all have to like come up against ourselves in the mirror.
There are healers on this planet with the power to soften the suffering of mankind. Yet they have remained in the recesses of the world, abused, discarded, and labeled as trash. This is The Touch of a Mustang. I am your host, Shalise Clough, and I'm here to tell the story of wild horses, Mustangs, and the humans who are discovering and sharing their gifts while working to protect their well-being and preserve their spirit so this divine power won't be lost. Join us on this quest with the Wild Mustang. Thank you so much for being here today. Let's start with, if you can tell everybody kind of what you do and how you became involved in doing it. It's a little bit of a different topic because we're going to be talking about thoroughbreds today, but I think there's a lot of similarities with some of the challenges that Mustangs also experience.
For sure. Well, first of all, thank you so much for inviting me. I know we've been going back and forth for a while, and I've really wanted to do it, but then I've been like scared and hesitant, and I've never done a podcast before. So thank you for persisting, and I'm excited to do it. So I guess horse specific, we'll start there. So like a lot of people, I grew up, pony club, doing 3 days a week lessons, a bit of hunter jumper, stuff like that. My parents had a farm and I had a little pony. And so pretty traditional, like it's not, I'm not a world-class rider or anything, but I always loved horses and like I said, grew up riding. And then my parents sold their farm when I was in my teens and we moved to Vancouver Island. So gone with the pony, just proximity to where I could ride, it just became super difficult. So I fell out of riding. And then fast forward about 15 years and my daughter kind of, got bit by the horse bug. And after a lot of family conversations, we decided to take the plunge and go full, whole hog into it. So my daughter, we got her pony. I was getting my thoroughbred, and that kind of is my history with that. When I had my pony, there was a thoroughbred called Epic. Solid bay, love this off-track thoroughbred, and I desperately wanted him, and my parents were like, too dangerous, we're not doing that. And he was $5,000, which was quite hefty at that time. So this time background, I'm like, I'm getting that thoroughbred, it's happening. And so that is sort of getting back into horses. And then what happened was really organic. My husband sort of saw the relationship that I was building with my horse, and he got his own off the track thoroughbred. My daughter got off the track thoroughbred. My son has an off the track thoroughbred. And we just sort of became this family of off track thoroughbreds.
Nice.
Doing trail rides, and you can see a lot of that on our Instagram and stuff. And I just fell in love with them. And my grandparents had taken me to the races growing up as a child, both trotters, standard breds, and then also thoroughbreds as well. So I'd always just been enthralled with, the power and I don't know, if anyone who loves a thoroughbred knows, just like people probably that love Mustangs, right? It's just, it gets a hold of you, and no other breed will do. No other horses is good. It like that, you just fall madly in love with them. And then, so when I got my horse, I started looking around, okay, how do I get a thoroughbred? Because I had never bought one or adopted or done anything. And that's when I met the facilitator who runs Newstride Thoroughbred Adoption, which I didn't know existed, but just kind of digging down the rabbit hole. And I met Carmen, their facilitator. We became fast friends, and really trying to fast forward the story, she sort of mentored me into, I just saw the work they were doing, and I'm like, I need to be a part of this. There needs to be more of this. They only take a small percentage of total horses coming off the track. So I said, is there a demand for that? Like, if we were to open an organization, is there enough need? And she was like, we don't even take, if you look at the total number coming off, it's those that go into aftercare, it's a very small percentage. So I was just, bright-eyed and bushy-tailed, and here we are today. So I basically do Carmen's role, but for Wildheart, which is basically all of the things, right? You're doing vet appointments, you are talking to the owners and the trainers, you're picking horses up, you're scheduling appointments, feet done, all of the things, right? Organizing the trainers with the horses, everything. And so that's it in a sort of nutshell.
What was it like going from kind of just being a domestic horse owner to we're going to start helping other horses and try and funnel them into good homes also?
I think really the catalyst was just seeing, like, how, what's that, like reticular activating, when you're aware of something, now you're seeing it everywhere. So I had never really seen thoroughbreds in my adult life, but now that I had my mare from New Stride, I started seeing in our BC TAC group or other, online platforms for sale direct off the track. And I just started seeing, like, wait a second, there's a gap here. Like how I got my horse through adoption, I was heavily vetted. I had to send pictures of my facility. I had vet references. I had, like, these were the demands and the hoops you had to go through to make sure she was being placed in a good home. Follow up. She continued to follow up with me, well, to this day, but it just seemed like, wow, this is really for the horse. And obviously I love my horse so much. I'm like, every horse deserves, especially thoroughbreds who have been, they are in entertainment, right? For human entertainment, they deserve to be supported, like to go from being a professional athlete, trained to do this job, to be thrust into what I call like general population. They're not prepared for that. And there is a gap. Like, I think general people think, oh yeah, they've been there, done that. I'll get a horse off the racetrack and they're just ready to ride. And yes, they are meticulously managed and trained exceptionally for that job. Your average horse rider is very, I don't want to say like disheartened or caught off guard by
He's not a jockey.
No, like they don't stand at the mounting block. They lean into pressure. They're like, everything is different. It's not a blank slate. Like, even like a Mustang in a lot of cases, it's not a blank slate. You're starting beyond at a deficit. Because they're going to need to learn the opposite, not just new, the opposite of what they've learned to be successful racehorses. So I don't know. I just saw that, what, there's a gap here. And I saw what they were doing, and I thought this needs to be across the board. It needs to be 100% of horses retire, go to aftercare. They're, vetted physically, assessed personality wise, ridden by trainers, handled by volunteers to kind of see what, what kind of home that they would excel at. And I don't know. I had to work at it.
Yeah. Was that a big learning curve to go from kind of, we're going to get these horses and enjoy them as a family, to we really want to make an organization that's responsible and bringing in these horses and making sure as much as we can that they're going to have a successful life moving forward?
Yes. And I think too, because people have asked me this before, like, if you knew then what I know now, I'm so grateful that I didn't know what I know now at the beginning. Only because, and that's not like anything like slight on racing. I don't mean from that perspective. I just mean how difficult it has been, and like the hurdles and the challenges and things that I just didn't even anticipate. I don't know that I would have started. Now I'm happy we're here, but if I had known that, like I went in bright-eyed and bushy-tailed, then I think that you kind of have to go in with that. And that, because otherwise a sane person would quit. That's the truth.
Yeah, because I imagine it's a hard process. It's a lot to walk through, a lot to learn. What were some of the challenges?
Setting up as a charity, like in Canada, so that's like a 501c3. To get that stamp took 8 months. Like, it's a very arduous process. Like I'm like, we're getting it, we're not, like the stipulations and the hoops and all of the things. That was one of the hardest things. And collecting donations without having that stamp, and you can't issue tax receipts before you have it. It's just like that. You really have to have it. So we operated as a nonprofit for the first maybe year. And then, once we got that was huge. And then, I don't even know where to start. There's been so many challenges. I guess when I first started, I thought people are going to see the vision. Like I have a clear vision I'm going to put out there. They're going to love it. Everyone's going to want to support it. It's just the best thing ever. And as life happens, that's not always the case. You don't, I thought there's North American thoroughbred aftercare grants and stuff. And I'm thinking they're going to see what we're doing and they're just going to love it. We're going to get those grants. It's going to be great. But as you kind of learn as you go, many of those thoroughbred specific grants, they won't kind of even look at you till you've been in operation for 3 years. And it's like you have to have minimum number of horses at a current time. So there's a lot of, the incentives to get into aftercare versus say to get into actually racing, there's a huge discrepancy. And that's another thing that I feel very passionate about is they should be much more equal, right? It should, people wanting to do this work, which is super important, not only for the horse, but for the future of the sport, there needs to be incentives for people to do that. At minimum, assistance with the cost of providing rehabs and doing these types of things. And I have, there's probably millions more, but that's all I can think of off the top of my head.
Yeah, I'm sure it has been an incredible journey because like you say, a lot of times you start something and you're like, this seems like a great idea. And then you get in it and it is a lot more complicated, a lot more obstacles than you anticipate. Tell us a little bit about what is kind of the process that it would be for a horse that ends up with you. Like, where do they start? What are some typical experiences? And then how does that go once they get to you, the work you do, and then leading to adoption?
For sure. So as it stands, and most aftercares, I won't say all, are the same in that we want to work with the horses who are at the, I don't want to say biggest risk, but we don't take horses from private owners. Like we work directly with the racetrack. And so what will happen is we have a form on our website. Trainers or owners it says submit a horse. So they'll fill out the documentation, submit it to us. It goes to our board of directors, and barring certain stipulations, the horse is accepted into our program. Then we go and we actually pick the horse up from the racetrack, bring it back to the ranch, and then the process begins there. And so like most other aftercare organizations, we follow AAEP transitioning of the thoroughbred protocols. So their diet is transitioned. If they have an injury, it is reassessed. New imaging is done. Again, they see a vet. All that happens, and the rehab is carried out, or they have their time off, let down and whatnot. And then they will begin retraining on the ground and under saddle. So that's kind of a Cliff's Note version of how they come to us. And we do get a lot of submissions from people that already own horses off the track. And this was another thing, like I didn't set out to do like a field experiment, but you inevitably kind of learn information along the way. Like we get a lot of emails from people who have purchased directly off the track being like, oh my gosh, I bought this horse 6 months ago. I bought this horse, 3 months ago. Would you accept it into your program? Would you? And that's just not a channel that we work with. Right. And so you start to see, yes, there is an issue by buying directly off the racetrack. There is a fallout. There's a kink in the line down the hose and it's spewing everywhere and we need to address it. By, proper placement. And there are lots of sales agents and, listing platforms. And I'm not saying that is a negative thing because it needs to exist because right now aftercare is nowhere near 100% in terms of, a service and being able to be offered. So there's a place for that. But there's this kind of idea that, an agent or someone going to a racetrack somewhere, taking photos, writing down what the owner or trainer tells the person to write down, post, that's aftercare. Like that's a sale and there's no additional vetting, independent vet seeing the horse. It's not being reassessed. There's no ongoing follow-up. There's no, calling references. There's no like that. That's not horse first in my mindset anyways. I don't even remember what your question was.
It was a good answer. Are a lot of people that get off the track thoroughbreds ending up not being successful with the adoption because they're kind of anticipating a finished horse and it's really kind of a project horse or even a restart or completely retraining, it sounds like?
Yes. Sorry. Do you mean if they buy it direct off the racetrack or go through aftercare? Or both?
Yeah, like for the horses that have not gone through aftercare, for someone who's just like, I want an off the track thoroughbred, and then they just get one off the track so direct, I guess.
We definitely get a lot of emails from people like that where it's it's a whole lot of, it's not what I was expecting. It's, wow, okay, what have I got myself into?
Mm-hmm.
Do you have any resources? Can you guys help out? Would you accept this horse in your program? Like, we get a lot of emails like that. So that's, again, I don't know if studies have been done on it. A lot of what I'm sharing is just anecdotal from, the past 3.5 years. We do field a lot of emails like that of people who have purchased off the track directly and then kind of feel in over their head. And it's like, if that horse had that period and kind of had that baseline brought up a little bit, the person probably would have been a lot more successful, because we even say, on our website, it says, and first of all, adoption fees are half what you would buy off the track. So you have the benefit of having a bit of extra buffer to invest in training of the horse, further, to work with a trainer. Like, it is entirely horse-centered, horse first. And so, but even with us, we say that what you're going to save on, if you had purchased, having the horse has seen a vet, we provide ample time if they want to do further diagnostics in terms of like a PPE or whatever. And then still anticipate you're going to have to work with a trainer if you're not a professional yourself. Your horse is going to be crazy for maybe 3 weeks until it settles and gets to know. It's like, a kid being yanked from school, and guess what? New school, the rules are different. You got new friends, it's very overwhelming.
Yeah.
Because horses have such
whole new curriculum. We're wanting you to learn different things.
Totally. And they have very deep bonds with each other that I think people now are more aware of than maybe in decades past. Like our 3 that we have, it's like they are tight knit, and, it's a lot more important than I think people think sometimes. So what we ask them to do is a lot.
Yeah, and I think a lot of times people really underestimate how much, from what you're describing to me, it sounds like you guys are putting a lot of money into these horses. Even in an ideal scenario where maybe, they come back and the injuries are nothing significant or whatnot, that adds up. That adds up pretty fast.
Yes.
So to be able to have that process where they're able to see that, where you guys are able to kind of take a look at the horses, meet their needs.
Yeah. Our average cost is about $3,000 a horse. So every horse is at a loss, right? So adoption fees will range from $1,500 to $2,500. So $1,500 is going to be a horse that does have some sort of a limitation in their second career. And then $2,500 is the horse has no limitations. We also don't just take what the public sort of calls, and it's not my term, it's just what has been said to me, is broken horses. So, pasture pets, or, whatever. We develop relationships with owners, and we've kind of promoted this where it's like aftercare only works, like it's a rising tide lifts all ships. You can't put all rehab cases on a charity and then sell your sound. We take both. We take your sound, because those ones that retired awesome support their buddies that didn't fare as well. And that's how it has to be. So we take their sound horses and we do their rehabs for them. And so those are the types of relationships that we have. So we always will have a mix of horses, those that, will need a little bit more of a limited career. They are harder to rehome as well. And we don't take, I'm kind of going off on a tangent, we don't take pasture pets. So that's another thing. They are not adoptable. And I hate to say that, but that's one of the things I think that I really want to talk about on this podcast. I would love one day, if we were to get a significant gift, to have a sanctuary arm, because it is desperately needed. But the reality is, approved homes with the experience, looking for a horse that is 3 years old and is going to live 25 years and is only pasture sound. In 3.5 years, we've had one pasture home approved. And I wish that wasn't the case, but that is the reality, is that everybody wants a sound horse, even your backyard rider. Yes, you can rehome the ones that have an injury, but it is incredibly difficult to find an approvable home. Yes, you could flog them, but it's very hard to get a quality home for those guys. So they end up staying longer. And that's another one of our advocacy pillars too, is, aftercare for all, 100% across the board, and retire one race early. So that's like an education piece too, I think, just in the industry is, there's a lot of incredible people in the industry, and I have lots of amazing stories to share about that. But I think just understanding that, retire on that hairline fracture. Don't push that one more. If a horse has, 10 screws in its leg, call it, right? Like that's sort of the general feedback we've gotten from the public is, can racing evolve into the next century? And I think it's possible. Like, I take my kids to the races. I support and I love the races. And like, two things true at the same time, there are improvements that can be made that probably need to be made in order for it to continue, thrive, I would say.
Yeah. And so maybe talk a little bit about that. I think a lot of people probably would go one way or the other with races. Like, it's great, it's awesome, or it's inhumane and it's terrible for the horses. I think most of the times it's probably somewhere in the middle where you have some of both and a lot in the middle. What, from your view, how is the racing industry for horses?
I think it's like so many other things, and we don't need to talk like politics and whatnot, but it's like, are there bad people in the church? Yes. Are there the best people you've ever met in the church? Yes.
Mm-hmm.
The same is true for racing, and the same is true for
Yeah.
heifer jumper, and the same is true for barrel racing, and the same is true. So I think it's, we've been very fortunate in that, I mean, we only really work with those owners who, like, I'll tell you a story. We adopted a horse out. The lady who adopted started having some issues. The horse had no limitations and it was unrelated. But the owner saw on Facebook that the adopter was having some issues. So she calls me up and is like, basically, I want to make a donation to go towards helping this adopter with this, unplanned for vet bill. Like, those are the types of owners, and those are stories that, we want to showcase, because those people exist and they're wonderful, and they should be on a platform. That's the things that people don't see. And the owners too, like, they'll donate a sound horse and they still will donate $500 or $1,000 for a sound horse. Just because they believe in the mission and whatever. So there are many, many owners like that. And then I also have some not so good stories where it's like, yeah, that's how the bad rap happens. And you got to really nip that and make it less possible for those types of people to be in the industry. So I think it would be difficult to say, again, like, all good, all bad. We've been lucky that we deal with a lot of exceptionally giving, and they love their horses so much. They retire most of their horses sound, and it's been phenomenal.
Yeah. And I think it's important to recognize that the racing industry does provide a place for these horses where they're valued in our world. And if that can be done in a good way, and I would imagine a lot of the horses enjoy it. From my experience, a lot of things were like, horses shouldn't do this. Well, I mean, we don't necessarily know how they feel about it, but a lot of competition horses, I think, can enjoy their work. So I think it is really great to hear those stories where you have owners where it's like, yeah, we have this horse for a time and we're utilizing it for racing, but we still want to make sure that they have a good life after that.
Yes.
How does, like, the supply and demand compare? Like, are there a lot coming off the track and not places for them to go?
I feel like I want to be careful saying too much about that because I don't have facts on it. So I don't know. I don't think, I feel like I couldn't answer that. My guess would be between us and the other organization, it would be less than 25% of what comes off the track. So that's 75%. That I can't really speak to what happens or, So I feel like I can't, I couldn't educated guess on that. I'd like it to be 100%.
No, that's totally fine. Yeah, absolutely. Is aftercare a pretty typical avenue for racehorses to go through? Talking to you is actually the first time that I've heard about it. I think I've seen a lot of people who struggle with off-the-track thoroughbreds. They're definitely one up there that kind of have a reputation of being a little more difficult for the person who is just wanting a horse to ride. Maybe you can just speak a little bit to that. Is that something that is pretty typical for racehorses that are retiring?
Yes. So I'm not sure if you're familiar with it, but one of the largest, and I believe it's the oldest aftercare organization in North America, is called New Vocations. And you can Google them, and they're like an incredible facility. And so it's definitely more prevalent in the States, 100%. So there are way more aftercare organizations, but if I was guessing though, again, there's way more racetracks. So, there are tracks that are maybe behind the times. Many tracks have been shut down in the US, but they also are the holder of the tracks that have been the most successful. And, they have tracks that are associated with a aftercare organization, and they're just thriving all around. So it's kind of like a mixed bag. Canada, we have much less tracks, and obviously so much fewer aftercare. And I would say definitely at this current snapshot in time, though things are changing, I think in 2025, Canada is a few steps behind in terms of, like I said, the big successful tracks. If you go there, you see aftercare out front and center. And so they're a little bit ahead in that way, but they do have way more tracks than we do.
What is the difference between aftercare versus just a rescue taking in off the track thoroughbreds?
So yeah, there's a couple of different, and that's a decision in the very beginning that we had to make, is whether, so if you're a rescue, typically you are speaking out against the racing industry is kind of, and this is kind of a blanket statement. It may not always be true. But you are, they're going to auctions, they're finding emaciated thoroughbreds, and saving them from, going to slaughter. I say saving only because, you don't always have all the information, of course, but, so it's, they're on the front lines. It's when they're raising funds to, like, All Seated in a Barn is a great organization, or Sweet Mercy's Rescue. I follow both of those. They do lots of good work, but it's like, we need, everybody that's watching this live needs to donate $10 like 5 minutes ago, because we're going and saving these, it's very high stress. You're on the front lines. If you're doing aftercare, typically you are working with the industry. So you're not out there, speaking ill of the industry. You are trying to make a positive change in the industry. It is, it's one of those things too, where, and I understand this, we have some owner friends where, if something happens to one of their horses, people are really vitriolic towards them. Like, you hate your horses, you beat your horses, you don't care about them. And it's like, couldn't be further from the truth. And so obviously when someone attacks you like that, you shut down. There's no conversation. There's nobody's coming to the table. And so when we first started, we really sat down and thought, we don't want to go the route of, they need rescuing. The horses that we get don't need rescuing. I sort of consider it like we're further up the pipeline. So we're trying to get them right from the racetrack, set that higher baseline so that they have more doors open for them and they don't end up, being sold and then sold again and again and again and again. And we keep a radar on them so they don't end up in those types of situations. So yes, a rescue is usually kind of anti-racing, speaks out about racing pretty negatively. And aftercare typically does work within the industry. And then, so the other thing too is, if you're aftercare, you're getting grants, and which I sort of alluded to before, that was kind of not been our experience to date. But in order to qualify for a lot of those grants, obviously you can't, they're grant issuers. So they'll go to the Kentucky Derby, they'll go to these big races and gather tons and tons of money, and then they allocate it to aftercare boots on the ground organizations. In order to do that, obviously they're not going to go to races, collect money from owners and all these things, and then give it to an organization that's saying, okay, racing sucks, it's the worst, which makes sense, right? That makes sense. So you're going to have to go and fund on your own and kind of do that Mayday funding, which is just something that for me, it was not the route that we wanted to go.
Yeah. And I think it really does serve the horses best if we can all kind of come together. In the Mustang world, there's a lot of divides too, just because of, people thinking one way is the best or the only way. And I think it really does do a disservice to the horses, especially when there is the opportunity to where it's like, we can all work together, and we can all use these resources and they're all needed. So I love that you are really working in the process and with the people and trying to improve the industry and make it a better place for the horses. Talk a little bit about funding. So you've talked about grants. We've talked about kind of how expensive it is for every horse if you're bringing in and, vetting them, dealing with injuries on some of them. Is there enough funding that you guys have found to be able to keep up with it? Is that one of the struggles to be able to get funding? And also, is it common for breeders, owners to kind of step in and help with that transition, as you've talked about some definitely do?
Yeah, so that has been probably the biggest challenge that we've had. So at the most at one time we've had is 8, and we could do more if funding was not an issue. And then we dropped down to, now we have 3. So the last few that we adopted out, we did not replace, because we've sort of realized now, The charity has to have its own money. Like we can't be for the first year, like if you're starting anything, we sort of undertook and understood like you have to put your vision out there first. No one's going to, you're starting something tomorrow and you want me to donate $10,000. It's like, well, show me what you're doing. What's the vision? What's your work? So that makes sense. So we sort of knew that would be the case. So initially in the first year or two, we donated like a fair amount covering vet bills and all that type of thing. And then as we've sort of grown, it's like the pumping of the well, right? When the water flows, then it's coming more easily, right? So the main way that we fundraise is we do organizational donors. So it's businesses. I hate asking for money, so I didn't want to be like banging on my family's door or friends' doors like all year long.
Yeah.
So we structured it where once a year we go out to, businesses and we say, like, if you want us to advertise you, maybe we use their products, maybe we don't. A really great one that we've had since day one is Cavello Hoof Boots, who have been just phenomenal. And so they will do a larger donation, several $1,000s, and then they're on our website all year. We showcase their products, show, just their philanthropy. And so that's been like the main part of our fundraising. And then we do like mini fundraisers or clinics and stuff like that. And that helps. But our work especially in the last year and definitely heavily in 2025 is getting to work with the racetrack and then with the industry that we're serving. We believe that, and it says on our website too, like we want to showcase our biggest supporter is the industry we're serving, because it is very difficult to go to a business who sells, I don't know, cars and has nothing to do with racing, doesn't benefit at all. And they only pay $5,000. Right. And it's like, it is a question that comes up. People will say, well, what does the industry do? And then that radio silence is strong. Right. And so in 2025, we actually just welcomed a new powerhouse of a lady who I absolutely love. Her name is Lisa Russell, and she's our director of fundraising now. And she works at the track that we serve. And she's like just a huge advocate, like a little pit bull in the best way possible. She inspires me. She's just awesome. So I think that the tides are changing because you need to have reliable funding, because obviously the thing with horses is say you have 8. Well, funding runs dry. You can't, we're not feeding them. Oh, they're not doing their training, or they're not seeing the vet. Like
there's reliable expenses.
Totally. And we never wanted to be like, there are some rescues in our area where, and I hope it doesn't come across the wrong way because their work is really important, but where it's sort of like, we desperately need hay funds. We need it tomorrow. And again, for whatever reason, just for me personally, that doesn't align with me. I always want to be like, okay, we're only taking in horses.
Yeah.
That yes, we need to fundraise ongoing. Yes, we need to do those things, but the horses are covered and they're good, right? Like you don't want to kind of be doing that type of advertising because you do take in, it's a different avatar, I guess, for donors. Somebody who's going to donate $10 on an absolute Mayday, save this horse's life today, that person's typically not going to donate $5,000 to you in a thoughtful way. It's Mayday giving. And I think you have to be pretty strategic about what type of person you're kind of going after to help support the vision.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think for any organization, any individual even who is working with horses, they really are best served when we are realistic. Yeah. If we take in 20 horses and we can't take care of them, then they're no better off. So, totally. I mean, a lot of that is just reality, is that if we want to be responsible in whatever work we're doing, or even in our private horsemanship, that money, finances, like we've got to be thinking about that. We need to ensure that we can take care of what we're taking on. I love that you're working with the industry and really trying to make that connection and that transition for the horses, because I agree, if people can go and see like, hey, the horses are racing and then they're moving into this aftercare that the industry is supporting, it really does show that people do care about the horses, which I think you pointed out. There are definitely some owners that work within that really do care about the animals.
100%. Yeah, 100%.
Talk about some of the horses that you've been able to take in and have successful transition from the racetrack to a private home, and kind of what that experience was like for you participating in that.
So two come to top of mind. The first one we ever did was like, I was a bawling idiot because I just well, the first one, right? Like you just so bonded. And actually, funny enough, is this particular horse was the full brother to my mare. So that's pretty rare, right? Same dad, same mom. And and they looked spitting image. He looks just like my mare. And yeah, so that was really hard. Like, that it's the right thing. It's a vet at home. And actually he's still local in our small town, which is wonderful. Actually, the lady that did adopt him, they had some life circumstances come up, and he had to be rehomed. But of course, we have the contact info, so we still get updates from where he is at, and it's in our town. So his name was Musaka Chef, and he was very special to me. And he had a long racing career. Like he wasn't a war horse, but he had a long racing career. Like he might have raced 7 years, which is a very long time. So he was ready for,
oh, wow. Yeah, that's very long.
Dote on him. And yes. And then another one, it's funny because you become really good friends with the people too, obviously, because you're doing follow-ups, right? Like you're seeing the one I told you about who had some issues down the line, and the original trainer or owner, sorry, wanted to donate towards the care. She is super good, like hunter jumper rider. And and she's very active on Facebook. So she's always posting photos of them jumping and her teaching the horse how to jump. And like, it's super fulfilling. Like you want to keep them all yourself. That's a thing I've had to learn. And I'm not going to keep them myself. I have two myself. But that's hard.
Yeah.
You love them so much,
yeah.
right? And you really do bond with them, and they really come out of their shell, and it's difficult. It's heartbreaking, but in a good way, I guess. Yeah. And a lot of things local.
I mean, something we probably don't talk about enough.
Yeah. And so most of them stay within BC. We actually have somebody coming to look at Mr. Bowman, who is our longest running resident ever. So he does have a visible injury on the outside. He's healed and cleared for flat work, but he has a very ugly knee. And so he gets passed over time and time again. But a wonderful lady who's been up and visited the ranch before has, this 40-acre property in Washington, and another horse that he'll get to run and jump and play. And she's into liberty work and, very light riding. So she's coming to meet him again in March. So hopefully that would be another really heartfelt one, because he's a very, very special, unique boy. Like he's, if he doesn't like you, you'll never catch him. If he likes you, you can ride him bareback in the halter, and he is fabulous. So it's so funny.
Yeah.
Like it's
no surprises how he feels.
No. And so he's had a couple meet and greets, and, we had this one person come, and they might have, well, in retrospect, they were nervous. They had an approved home and it was good, but they pick up a brush, walk towards him, holding the brush out like this. He takes one look, turns around, runs away, and I have to go get him. And it's like, this is a horse that, again, it's like you'll hop on him with no tack whatsoever, and he just goes off your energy.
Yeah.
Like you raise your energy up, you're trotting. You breathe out, he comes to it. Like he's just an angel, but only for certain people. So he'll be one that would be another one that is really special. Yeah.
Yeah. He's really making sure he gets the right home.
Yes. Or trying to stick around here forever. Like he's kind of a mascot.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. One of the two. That's probably a good one to talk about. What are some of the things that you feel like would have been a huge benefit for you to know going into this, that you've kind of had to learn along the way?
Okay, let me just think about it for a sec. One of the things that I did do, that if somebody wanted, I also get a lot of emails on people wanting to just start a charity. Like I get a lot of emails about that. And one of the first things that I did was reached out to all of the other aftercare organizations and tried to get the founders to hop on a call with me or answer just in an email, brain dump all my questions. And so many were super gracious with their time. And so I said, if you had to start your, 50-year-old organization today with nothing, what would you do that you differently? What did you do that was you do again, or you wouldn't do? Like, what were your challenges? And so I got this list, and and I read through it actually pretty frequently. And that was like a game changer and cut a lot of corners for me in terms of like learning by from the people that have gone before me. And so I would always recommend that he does that. And the other thing, I was talking to one of my good friends about this, is any advice that's going to be worth anything to anybody, you will seek out yourself. Like, if you let that sink in, that changed my life. So somebody who's been riding for 40 years at your barn is going to come and say, well, geez, you know, your podcast, you really should do this. Or you actually, but that person doesn't have a podcast. That person, like, the best advice is going to be by someone with their blinders on, doing the thing that you want to do, and you're going to have to ask them, and they're going to have to be kind enough to give of their time. Any advice that comes to you that is free, that is from somebody who hasn't done anything that you want to do, just because they've been riding for 30 years, their advice is garbage. So that's something that I think is super important, is don't listen. And there's a lot of unsolicited advice, you know, well, I'd have done it this way, or why don't you do this, or why don't you? And it's like, I always say, it's like people are dealing in mock scenarios with play money, with, you know, like assuming that all their ideas are just have no hurdles. And it's like, they've not walked the path. So finding people like your tribe of people, you know, and choosing that wisely of what information you're filtering in, no matter what it is, whether it's like a romantic relationship, you're starting a charity, you're starting a business, you're starting a podcast. Like, if you want to take a horse to the Retired Racehorse Project, I'm going to find somebody who's been to the retired, not somebody who, even if, again, they've ridden for 40 years, but they haven't done that. So they have no advice that's going to be valuable to what you want to do. Yeah, that's a huge one for me anyway. And then what was that?
Yeah. I mean, that's good life advice too. Yeah. Just look for the people who are doing what you want to be doing and are where you could see yourself being. I think that's really important advice. Any other things that you wish you would have known?
I feel like, and maybe that's a bad answer, but I honestly am happy that I didn't know, you know, like I think it would have changed things, and it wouldn't have, if I had known certain things, like I said, I was a bit bright-eyed and bushy-tailed, and I'm happy that I went in that way, because I think there are a lot of storms that happen. And so in order to weather that, there has to be a piece of being a bit naive. You must have that. Otherwise you will quit. And I think that, and then also I'm going to share with you my favorite book. Okay. So it's called The Game of Life and How to Play It by Florence Scovel Shinn. And it was written in like the late 1800s. And so you got to kind of filter that when you're listening to it on Audible, because the language, kind of, some of it feels a bit old, and she talks a lot about God, but you don't have to be religious to listen to it. Like, you know, I just believe there is something greater than myself. Like, there's a higher power or whatever. If you believe anything that there's something greater than yourself, then you can adjust how, you know, when you're listening to the book. And one of the things that she talks about that, I have learned a lot in the past 3.5 years is there's a chapter on non-resistance, and because we fight tooth and nail, and you know what I mean? And it's like push and grind and all these things. And there is a part of that if you're trying to make something happen, but then there's also this component of like, you know, can I leave it? Can I change it? Do I have to accept it? All else is madness. Like, there's only so much that, you know, I feel super passionate about this vision, and I'm so hopeful that there is an adjustment and the industry evolves. And, you know, I'm super excited and I'm along for the ride. And I think it's going to be amazing. And at the same time, some of the decisions in there are not mine. And I have to be non-resistant to whatever will be. You know, can you look yourself in the mirror and been like, I acted with integrity. I was always horse first. I did the right thing. I'm proud of myself. Like, all those things, which we all have to like come up against ourselves in the mirror, right? But the non-resistance piece, I'm kind of going off on like a random tangent, but that book I have listened to 50 probably times in the last 3 years. There's just so many pieces in there that's like, yeah, must read.
I'm going to have to check it out for sure. I haven't even heard of it. I do think that's so true. Like, to kind of set those foundational values, this is what we're going to do. And then kind of like hop on for the ride, I think, because until you're there, you just really don't know what's coming.
Yeah. Just release it. Like, in a perfect case scenario, like I said, in 2025, we get that reliable funding, you know, from the industry. We can grow, which is required for us to grow, is the truth. And, you know, ultimately we can also create a sanctuary arm. Racing starts to get more new faces involved. Like there's these pictures, I mean, it's before I was born, but if you Google it, like of Hastings racetrack in the 1950s or 60s or whatever, and it's like it's hustling and bustling and there's families, and it's like if you've never been, it's like it is thrilling and inspiring, and like it's a wonderful way to spend a day as a family instead of like kids on screens.
Yeah.
Right, like it can be in its glory again, and there are changes that must take place. And there have been changes in the industry in the past, even 10 years. HISA in the US, regulatory things happening, improvements to track footing. Like there's been a lot of improvements. But that thing of you can care about your horses, you can do a great job, and there still are areas that you can even double down and do better in, right? And aftercare is one of them.
What are some areas that would really benefit the industry to maybe focus on for improvements and for even improving their image to people who do think racing's, inhumane or terrible?
I think that, again, I will cloak this with, of course, I'm biased, but I started this because I feel so passionate.
Yeah, from your experience too.
From my experience, I would say it is almost entirely aftercare. I think that society has evolved, and with, social media and things like this, welfare matters. People care about that. People want to know that if I'm going to go and watch these horses work and maybe gamble, whatever, I want to feel good about myself that I can go, and I'm the type of person who cares about animals. And another thing is, you look at greyhound racing, and I kind of say this to, friends in the industry, where it's like horse racing is so lucky because greyhound racing is out, race talk a couple lengths ahead, and the writing is on the wall, right? Failure leaves clues, and so does success. So what happened to greyhound racing? What was the problem? It's because you have a pet dog, I have a pet dog, and people started saying, hey, like these dogs are getting hurt, or, this is happening. And it imploded, right? And so it was no longer acceptable at all. So it's like horse racing is fortunate in that there is time, and the writing can, it can be changed, right? Improvements can be made instead of scurrying with bad press. Getting out in front of that, talking about aftercare. Like we care about our horses, we put in front, and we invest in aftercare heavily, super important to us. Like that's the message that first we want to see be the truth, and then we want to promote that because that is what we think is going to be kind of the be all end all of what happens next, I guess.
Yeah, and there really is an incredibly beautiful opportunity for owners and breeders to take that on and to make the industry something that is respected and a place where animals are cared for, because everybody has access to everything now, so we can show all that process if it's being done. And that's one thing I really love about like your social media page is it's just always so beautiful, and it has, just these great thoughts, and it is such a beautiful thing to be taking these horses and from where they had this career and being able to transition them into homes where they're either going into a second career or having a little girl that's taking care of them. It is a really beautiful process when it's done the right way. And so I love that, we are able to highlight that for those people that are doing it that way.
Thank you so much. We post a lot of funny memes in the winter only because we kind of shut down. Like we don't do meet and greets in the winter. So I'm like, how do I just like lift people up a little bit? So we do a lot of like random little funny memes to keep people smiling. But because our horses work with the trainers during the
I love them. Yeah.
So there's really there's only so many snow running pics you can take, right? So
no, I love it. Anybody who doesn't follow you guys should, just for it's good good entertainment and good thoughts and ideas to have in your day. What kind of homes do you look for after horses successfully gone for aftercare? What makes a good adopter for off the track thoroughbreds for the ones that go through your program?
That's a great question. So we do have, if anyone's interested and wants to go to our website, under our FAQ page, we have tons and tons of info there. Like what are the type, we do decline a lot of homes. So one of the biggest things is, so when they're at the track, obviously they are stalled, but they are in meticulous training, right? They're out breezing and whatever, and they're, just well cared for. When we adopt out, we do not adopt to homes that stall more than the horses in turnout. there are minimum turnout sizes. So we don't adopt to homes where, especially in larger cities now, unfortunately, it's like you have an in and out, and say it's like a 20-foot run, but it's, 12 feet wide. They can't. So we say your horse has to be able to pick up a walk trot canter, and they have to have a nose to touch. So they may not live alone, have to have a nose. And they have to be able to solidly pick up a nice canter and, go for a run. So stalled homes are a no. That's a huge one. And you have to have all the references. So we have to talk to your vet, we have to talk to your farrier. And then usually, depending on location, we will go and look at the facility ourselves. So there's no barbed wire as well. Obviously, there could be exceptions if somebody, again, has 40 acres. There might be a stretch on the back that's barbed wire. Like, we take it on a case by case, right? But if it's a smaller enclosure and it's barbed wire, that would be a no. So just anything that sort of benefits the horse, where the horse is going to be least or less likely to have behavioral issues. Again, the whole friends, freedom, forage. So if those have to be ticked, 100%. And then experience level as well. So if it's a younger rider, are they working closely with a professional, with a coach? Do they have somebody to help support them in those first couple of, months at least, or are they a professional themselves? So things like that. And then there is some discretion. So obviously, I kind of always say we're looking for the types of people who ask me if I have their racing plates. I want the type of person where, you want to make something out of their last set of racing shoes. Like you love that horse. It's not just a flavor of the week. You're going to love that horse through the hard stuff, through the easy stuff, through all the stuff. So, the fly-by-night kind of homes where it's like, well, I want to compete this summer, I need to get a horse, or what, like it's a vibe. I mean, not to sound woo-woo, but you kind of just know right away the people the types of questions they ask at the meet and greet. Like I would say, I don't know if that answers it, but.
Yeah, I mean, you're really looking for healthy, forever homes for these animals where they can just thrive for the rest of their lives. Are those requirements ones you had set in place at the beginning? Or did they evolve some as you kind of realized this is what the horses need?
Yeah, most of the Friends Freedom Forage was 100%, because just when we get them, even, it is night and day. Like, if you want to stall a horse that is not now coming out and breezing at a track, they are almost impossible to handle, like with no turnout, with, like, we've had them on stall rest before. It's very difficult, right? And so when you kind of tick off those boxes, a lot of the behavioral issues fall by the wayside, right? So really making sure that people are set up. I see posts all the time too, where, my thoroughbred's crazy. He's got to live in a stall right now because the weather's bad. So he's in there 23 hours. And it's like, okay. And they're feeding him full of grain. It's like, but you're not raising that.
He is going crazy. He just wants to get out.
He is going crazy. Exactly. Yeah. So, addressing those types of things. And then we also have an online kind of support community too that adopters can join. And we talk about, like, really common problems.
Oh, nice.
We've had professional trainers go on there and troubleshoot some very super common, like, trailer loading. There's so many misconceptions, and it's different in different parts of the world, but, they all load, they load all the time. And it's like, well, that's actually not the case. They haul in at the beginning of the season, they live there all season, and then they haul out at the end of the season. So some of them might have been in a trailer 4 times. So most of the ones that we get, and we say this on our website too, that people are not prepared for, and we do our best to prepare them, is they leave, being able to be walked on a loose lead onto a trailer before they leave, and close the door and back them out and all this, because your average person isn't equipped with ace and a chain and ready to twist a tail to get a horse in a trailer. Like, people are like, whoa, okay, that's not what I was expecting. So kind of, educating on that. So anyways, our online platform for that, I think, is really helpful for new adopters, or even just people with super young green horses that are maybe having those types of challenges. Again, the loading, not standing at the mounting block, craziness, all these types of things. The other thing I want to mention before I forget is the euthanasia as well. So that's something in the last year that we have adapted, that is really, really important. Sorry, I'm just silencing that. And that is, so if a horse becomes pasture sound in an adopter's home for whatever reason, part of our contract, which again always benefits the horse, and I might get judgment for this, but hear me out. In a perfect world, we can save all the horses, right? But in the world that we live in, I think 60,000 are slaughtered from Canada anyways, either shipped to Japan or slaughtered in Canada every year. So that tells me, right, like 60,000 is a lot. So humane euthanasia, if you have a 3-year-old, I don't care how young the horse is, and you are trying to free to a companion home, you can rest easy at night, and that horse may be okay for 2 years. But when that person's riding horse becomes the pasture pet, they no longer need the pasture pet. And so begins the downward spiral. So we heavily advocate, if at any point a person adopts and they cannot provide that retirement themselves, the horse needs to be euthanized, and that needs to be sent to us, that the proof of euthanasia. And I've changed my tune on that too. Like, if my horse became pasture sound, I always thought, well, I'd probably find a companion home. If I couldn't provide the retirement, no matter how old she was, I would euthanize her. Because now that I see what happens and what I've learned, the risk is far too high.
And like, what are some of the things that led you to that conclusion? Because certainly, there is a lot of suffering at times when animals aren't cared for after we've kind of made them dependent on us.
We get just a lot of this information, honestly, is just emails that we get. So it'll be, there's this thoroughbred, it's in a field by the side of the road. I think maybe the lady passed away. There's been just story after story. And it's like, here's an emaciated horse, doesn't have access to water, doesn't have, and then again, just the sheer numbers going through that you do see at auction and whatnot. There's, as long as horses are going that way, then there are too many horses. And I don't want that. Like, again, in a kind of Pollyanna perfect world, I would love there to be, I wish we had a sanctuary and we could field those and take those in. But as of this moment, that doesn't exist, at least in our area. That's a consistent pipeline to put pasture pets, right? Where, they're getting the vet care. They always have the hay and the feed. Like, that doesn't exist. So when sanctuary doesn't exist, we owe it to them to euthanize. And nobody wants to make that decision. Well, this horse would love liberty, a home to do liberty. And again, it's like, I would like to do liberty with my horse. I am too busy to do it with my own horse. And everybody's in the same boat. And that's just what I've learned. Again, kind of anecdotal, but I very rarely is someone coming along as an experienced home being like, I need to get one more horse just to do liberty with. It doesn't exist.
Yeah. And I think that just goes back with some of the realities that maybe we don't want to face, we don't like to see, but are realities when you're actually working in this world, that there is just not the level of resources, not the level of homes that are sometimes needed for these animals. And it is a big commitment to take on a horse of any kind,
Yeah.
So I think it's important to talk about the realities and to talk about really what is best for the animals and for the horses, and kind of keep that at the forefront. Even if you draw different conclusions, I think people wanting what's best for the horse, like that's important. What are some misunderstandings about thoroughbreds that are out there?
I feel like I shouldn't say there actually aren't misunderstandings. They are a bit nutty sometimes. I'm teasing, but I think when transitioned properly and somebody, takes it upon themselves to educate themselves on how to manage their day to day, how to work with them in training and whatnot. I think that they're fantastic. I think like any of, hot bloods, Arabians, Barbs, whatever, they are more sensitive. So that's a double side, there's two sides to that coin. They are incredibly sensitive, which is such a wonderful thing. Like, you'll never have a relationship like you will, like with your thoroughbred. Like, it is insane. Like, just best thing ever. And, you're taking your thoroughbred to a new location for the very first time. You have to plan a little bit differently. Like, it's not the same as taking, my daughter's pony, who will toddle on the trailer, get off, fall asleep at a new location. Like, that's not what a thoroughbred is. So I think sometimes is people wanting them to be different than they are, instead of embracing there's so many wonderful qualities. And yes, there is a mirror side to that, which is easy to work with, but being aware of that and working with their strengths instead of trying to, you can manhandle a thoroughbred into submission, but it doesn't work super well, like compared to, say, yeah, like a cold-blooded little pony, right? Like they're very sensitive. So they almost
Mm-hmm.
demand, like there's that saying that always goes around, like a thoroughbred is a horseman's horse, because you can't hide. You know, my gelding, for example, is like if you're too harsh, even like a little bit, right? He's gonna let you know and he's gonna put you in the dirt. Like you just, it demands that your skills and your sensitivities and your awareness. Like we have a volunteer and she was asking me like, what do you think the difference is? And I said it's all the same, but the caveat is that your awareness, I can work with my daughter's pony and kind of be thinking about other things, and and she's never going to kick, she's never going to like, she's with a thoroughbred, your awareness and presentness has to be on. Like I know that that horse turned towards me out of the corner of my eye, and that hyper awareness. So that's something I think that people get wrong about them, but that maybe they shouldn't, because it should be expected as a sensitive hot blood. And coming from racing background, that is unique to them.
Yeah. A lot of those characteristics sound like Mustangs, and I think it is the thing that puts them in danger, but it is also the thing that makes it such a gift to have a partnership with them, because it
Totally.
is, like you were describing, it's just like nothing else when you have that partnership, and it's like you guys are working together, you're having conversations rather than
Yeah,
a boss and a subservient.
totally.
It's a really cool interaction, a really cool experience, but comes with a lot more work and time and effort, and
Yeah.
it's not quite so easy. It's not quite such an easy road. Just jump on, and this is what we're going to do today, or this is the
Yeah.
competition we're going to. It's a little trickier than that.
Totally. And you know what? I think there's a place for both. If you look at it in climbing a mountain, right? It's like, and I am biased, like again, I get that. But it's like the view from, say, a Mustang or a
Yeah.
thoroughbred at the top of the mountains behind our house versus if I just rode my daughter's pony. You can't really put it into words. It's if you've worked to get a horse that is quite difficult to be able to do those things, the reward matches the climb. So it's like it'll always, those horses that sort of are born broke, right? That was never for me. Like I wanted to not necessarily work for it or earn it,
You
but
wanted the challenge clearly.
yeah, like it means so much more than if it's like, yeah, you're training to desensitize a thoroughbred even to tarps compared to, their cold-blooded counterparts. It's just a different experience, right?
What are some mistakes that are made by people who bring thoroughbreds into their lives, and what can they do to avoid them? I think just kind of preemptively, one thing I love that you guys do is that you have that little community. I think the reality is a lot of horses you get are going to have stuff that you're going to have to learn to work through. And I think it's really good to just accept that. Like, it's not always going to be perfect. Everything's not always going to go just how you want it. And it's something you can work through and learn from. And that's a pretty cool experience. What are some other things that you see happening with people who bring them in, and how can they make it a more positive experience, avoid those mistakes?
I think we did a post about this a long time ago, and I think the best thing you can do is absolutely nothing at first. So, like when they first get here, for example, people are always, and it's good because they're excited and whatever. You got to get your halter on, you got to do that, all the things. But the best thing you can do is go in and ask absolutely nothing. Be interested in them. It's a new life for them whereby you're coming into my paddock, and no, you're not coming out to work. No, you're not coming out because I'm taking something from you. No, I'm not coming out. You have to teach a new way of going. And so I think the most important thing that people can do is remove all of your expectations, even spend the first, 2 months is sort of the average letdown at minimum if they don't have an injury. So let them be out with their friends, go sit on a rock in their paddock and just be around them, right? Scratch them, try to find where, they like to be scratched. Listen to music, pick poo, and just develop that desire, that mutual interest and curiosity where it's like, okay, this human is not just only coming on, when they want to take something, I'm going to work, make it enjoyable. And I think that'll save a lot of time and heartache, because yeah, like I said, it's like with Mr. Bowman, he just won't let you catch him if he thinks that every time he sees this person coming, it sucks, right? But you have a relationship. he's like a dog though. It's like you walk into his paddock and you call him and he will come trotting over and he's so excited to come. And that's available in all of them if you spend that little bit of time at first asking nothing.
Yeah, I love that. I think that is really important. We get really frantic to meet our goals or hit our timelines. And a lot of times, given that time is going to make it a lot easier for whatever we ultimately want to do, starting with a solid foundation, I would say, where it's like, okay, you're watching out for me.
Yeah, totally.
Just kind of fun. If you were to just get a huge, amazing donation, what do you think are some of the things that are most needed in your work or within the industry where funds could really benefit?
The most important thing, I guess it's twofold. First, is having a buffer in the charity so that it can go off into the future. That's really important. And one of the things, for example, so my role as a facilitator, most aftercare organizations, that is a paid role. It's not like a heavily paid role, but maybe it's $25,000 a year or it's something. And so to date, I don't earn any money, never have. So moving at least that or even 2 roles to a paid role where that if anything ever happened to me, it is a role that somebody would actually step into and not be like, yeah, who would do 20 plus hours a week for free? Unfortunately, there's very few of us that are willing or able to do that, right? So moving to, mimicking some of the larger, longer standing organizations where you do in those key roles, you have people that, again, you can rely on because it is a job and it's not volunteer. So I think that would be a huge shift of what I see in other, successful organizations that have been around longer. And then also the big one is the sanctuary. Like it is heartbreaking to have to turn horses away. Like last year we turned 20 away. And it's heartbreaking because you take it personally, you take it on. It's like, I'm not taking out a second mortgage on my house or anything like that. But you think to yourself, like, could I do more? Could I donate more? Could I, and it's like, so having, where the charity could ultimately own its own land and have a sanctuary arm to take, field some of those ones that, they are in kind of a bad way as a pasture pet at 3 years old, then it's a place that they can go. And ultimately, people do equine assisted therapy too. Like that seems like very far in the future, but, giving them a job that is fulfilling and things, I think that would be really cool as well. Yeah.
That would be really cool. That's the future. I think it's going to come.
Yeah.
You guys are doing really cool stuff.
We'll have to reconvene in a year.
Absolutely. Yeah. I'd love that to see where it's gone. I have no doubt that you guys will be making strides. I really think you will. What are ways that people who want to become involved, support your organization, learn more about thoroughbreds, any of that stuff? What are some of the best things that they can do to support the work you're doing, to support horses coming off the racetrack and making the industry better?
The best way, so advocacy for sure. The pillars that I said, of course, advocating for aftercare for all, the retire one race early for people in the industry, and breed promotion. Considering adoption is huge, but best place to go is our website, or Instagram. Everything links through on our Instagram as well. And just visit our website and we have a tab under how to help. And so again, volunteering, considering adoption, making a one-time donation, becoming like a monthly donor. If you have a fresh off the track thoroughbred that you've purchased somewhere else or through whatever, becoming one of our patrons. So that's our online community where there's lots of training videos and support, moral support, things like that. That's a way. And I believe the lowest tier on that is $7 Canadian a month. So it's pretty nominal to access, a bunch of super helpful.
Yeah, very affordable. Mm-hmm.
So that would be, and then again, if you are an owner or a trainer, like the ones that we currently work with, is really considering how aftercare is going to play a role in the future for your barn, for your horses, for the future of the sport, and the love of the horse, as we say. So I think that's really important. And trainers and owners can learn more about that as well on our website under the Submit a Horse tab.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for coming on. I just really want to tell you how incredible I think your work is. find it so admirable when people can go in and take something that exists and work to make it better. I think that really does help our world. And so for you to be able to take these horses that are coming off the racetrack and to give them that second life where they can be cherished and valued. My mom got a off the track Thoroughbred when she was like 16. And then, so by the time I was born, it was that horse's baby. But yeah, just such cool horses. And they are really, really good horses if you're willing to work with them. And so I love that you are sharing that vision of them, because I think, a lot like the Mustangs, they kind of have a bad rap sometimes. They're a little crazy, especially if they're stalled all day or whatnot. But when you start to work with them, it can really be a beautiful partnership. And I can definitely see that just watching the work that you do on Instagram and the things that you share, just the way that you're able to kind of turn these lives around. So I would definitely love to come back and see where it goes from here. But I just want to tell you, you're doing really, really important work and really making a difference.
Thank you so much. And thank you for having me and letting me chat about it.
Thank you for joining us and learning about horses that heal and the humans who help them. We hope you'll continue with us on this journey. We'd love for you to subscribe on your favorite platform and follow The Touch of a Mustang on any of the major social media outlets. Please share with your friends, anyone who loves horses, or anyone who might be struggling and could benefit from this message. If you have felt the healing power of horses or help them in their divinely appointed mission, please reach out. We want to hear your story. As we say goodbye, always remember that the horse is always there to help you heal.